Hello, welcome back. In this video we will create a small service to rent rooms like Airbnb. We're gonna create a form that allows user to add a room for rent. We're gonna ask the user to add the address of the room, and we're gonna use Street Map to help him find the position of the room. I'm gonna search an address in Paris. I'm gonna enter the number and the name of the street. I got two addresses, the first in Paris and the second in other town. I'm gonna select the first address. We can see on map a marker on the position of the address. We can see address and coordinates on form fields. I need a picture for the room. In this example, I use the field URL for images, but for real project, I will use upload fields. I'm gonna add the price for one night, and a username, I'm gonna call it user. I'm gonna submit the room. There are 3 rooms for rent. I'm gonna upload the page to get the room that I added. We can see on map the marker that shows position of the room and the price. If I click on marker, I can see the image of the room. On mouse over, the position of the room will be in the center of the map. We can change the scale of the zoom on code. Now it's 14 and I'm gonna change it to 15. I'm gonna upload the page. Now it's more obvious. Let's start the project. I'm gonna create a folder for the project. Change directory room rent. I'm gonna create a virtual environment for the project. I'm gonna activate the virtual environment. I'm gonna install Django version 3.1. I'm gonna start a Django project. I'm gonna call it rent. I'm gonna change directory so I can use manage.py to create an app. Manage.py starts up rooms. I'm gonna run server to check if Django works. It works. In settings.py, I'm gonna add rooms to installed apps. In views.py, I'm gonna import template view. In this project, I'm gonna use template view and render. You are free to use render or template view. I'm gonna create a home view. It inherited from template view. Template's name rooms/home.html. Inside the folder of the application rooms, I'm gonna create a folder templates. Inside templates, I'm gonna create a folder rooms. Inside rooms, I'm gonna create an HTML file. I'm gonna call it rooms. I have to change template name. In this view, I will show rooms for rent. I'm gonna change the name of the view. I'm gonna call it rooms. In urls.py, I'm gonna add a path for the view rooms. I'm gonna import views. Path empty string views.rooms as view name equal rooms. Let's check if the view works. It works. We can see the title on browser. I'm gonna create a new view add room. This view allows user to add room for rent. return render request rooms/room.html. I'm gonna create a new HTML file room. Title add room. I'm gonna add a path to URL patterns. views.addRoom, name addRoom. The root is addRoom/. I'm gonna check if the view works. We need a model to save room information in database. In models.py, I'm gonna create a model room. First field username. If you create a real project, you have to use user.models. Second field price, the cost of the room for one night. Third field, the address of the room. Fourth field for latitude. Fifth field for longitude. We need coordinates of the position of the room, so we can show the position of the room on map. Last field picture. In this project I will use only one picture, but you can use many pictures. I'm gonna make migrations and migrate so I can use the model. I'm gonna create a super user so I can see when room was added. I'm gonna run server and log into Django administration. In admin.py, I'm gonna register the model room. We can see rooms in Django administration. Inside the folder of the application rooms, I'm gonna create a new file, forms.py. I'm gonna use models forms to allow user to add a room. From Django import forms. From .models import room. I'm gonna create a class room form that inherited from forms.model form. Class meta, the name of the model room, and fields equal all. In views.py, I'm gonna import the model room. And I'm gonna import the form room form. I'm gonna add form to the view add room. I'm gonna create a context that contains form. I'm gonna add context to render. I'm gonna use the form inside the HTML file room. We can use the method forms.asp. We can see the form on browser. I'm gonna add a static folder to my application. Inside it, I'm gonna create a folder rooms. Inside the folder rooms, I'm gonna create two folders, CSS and GS. Inside CSS folder, I'm gonna create a file style.css. And inside GS, I'm gonna create a file app.js. Inside room.html, I'm gonna import the static files. I have to use the statement load static. I'm gonna create a link to the CSS file style.css. And inside body, I'm gonna add a link to app.js. Let's see if Google Chrome loaded static files. We can see links of static files. In style.css, I'm gonna change the position of the element h2. And in app.js, I'm gonna print console.log test. We can see add room in the center of the page and test on console. In the HTML file, I'm gonna create a container. Inside it, I'm gonna add a div for form. And a div to find an address. Inside form, I'm gonna add field by field, so I can change the design of the form. I'm gonna add a label to each field. We're gonna need a button to submit the form. In style.css, I'm gonna use display flex to show form and find address in the same line. I'm gonna set the width of the form 50%. I'm gonna change the width of the inputs and font size. I'm gonna add p element before button to add a space between input and the button. I'm gonna change the background color of the form. I'm gonna add padding bottom to the class myForm. I'm gonna change the style of the button. I'm gonna change the font size. It's not responsive. I'm gonna use percent instead of pixels. Now the form is responsive. I'm gonna change the style of the button on hover. I'm gonna change the background color and the color of the text. I'm gonna add transition to the style of the button. We can add an input so the user can search an address, and when he selects the address we can get the coordinates. I'm gonna add a button find and a div to show addresses. In style.css we're gonna redesign the div room address. Google Chrome didn't update the static file. I'm gonna use another browser, Mozilla Firefox. If you face this problem, you can click on Ctrl plus F5 to force the browser to update the static file. I'm gonna add a break before button to add the space. I'm gonna change the background color of room address. We're gonna use JavaScript to search an address and get its coordinates. I'm gonna create a variable room address to get the value of the address. I'm gonna create another variable addresses so I can show the results. I'm gonna create a function show addresses. I'm gonna do a small test. I'm gonna show the value of the address added by the user. I'm gonna add onClick event to the button find. OnClick show address. On browser we can see the value of the address. This is a small test to check if the browser updates the static file. I'm gonna create a function find address. I'm gonna use nominatim API to find address and coordinates. In this project we will use OpenStreetMap. I will put a link in description that allow you to copy the first part of the URL. We're gonna use fetch to get addresses from the API. Fetch URL dot then response.json dot then data address data equal data dot then show addresses. In HTML file I'm gonna change the function that we call onClick. I'm gonna use find address. It didn't work because I have two functions that have the same name. Now it works. On console I'm gonna show you addresses. I got 3 addresses. We can see coordinates on the console. We can get latitude or longitude of an address and also the name. I'm gonna modify show addresses to show results. If address data.length greater than 0, I'm gonna use for each loop to show all addresses. Addresses.innerHTML equal div class result. Inside the div, I'm gonna add address.displayName. I got only one address. I forgot the plus before equal. Now I got all results. I'm gonna change the style of results. Font size 20 pixels. I'm gonna change the background color. Cursor pointer. I'm gonna add a margin between addresses. I'm gonna change the height. I'm gonna change style of results on hover. I'm gonna change the value of margin. I'm gonna add an event on click to each address to allow the user to pick an address. On click select address. We have to be careful when we add arcs to the function. First arg address latitude. Second arg address longitude. And last arg address.displayName. It didn't work. I'm gonna use inspect to find the problem. I forgot to count. Now it works. I'm gonna check the function select address. The address should be a string, but I got 4 variables. To solve this problem, we have to write address.displayName between two double quotes. Let's check. Now the address is a string. Next, we're gonna add selected address and coordinates to the form. Django forms add ID to each field. The ID is ID dash the name of the field. So we can use JavaScript to modify the value of a field. I'm gonna create variables for address and coordinates. I need these variables to add selected address to the form. Parameters of selected address are X for latitude, Y for longitude, and for address. Let's check if we can select an address. We can see that address and coordinates were added to the form. This is the end of this part. Next time we will add a map that helps the user to see the position of the address on map, and we will submit the form and save the room in database. This is the end. Take care.